Well, hello, and welcome to another little bit of positive balance in an uncertain world, and to Therapy Ted and me. And this is our last Friday balance, but we are still going to be coming to you every week on a Tuesday from here on in. Now, today we're going to follow on a little bit from Tuesday's video where we sort of were looking at ancestors. And as most of you know, who know me, who work with me, you'll know I don't believe in coincidences. And this week I've been listening to a number of podcasts about loads of different sort of topics. But one lady I was listening to called Layla Saad. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce her surname. It's Saad. But she mentioned being a good ancestor. And I thought this was really interesting. For those of you who have children, being a good ancestor, doing your work in your lifetime now means that you're not passing that on to your children and your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, for them maybe to have to carry it around, whatever it is. So this balance today has definitely come in based on looking at that. And it's also giving us a new insight into one of the harmonics. And most of you know that when I talk about ancestral inheritance, I normally say those pesky ancestors again. We normally have a little bit of a laugh around that, because up till now, we've made the assumption that the stuff that we're clearing is stuff that, you know, we don't need hanging around, stuff that our ancestors have given us, and it's just sort of baggage. But today's balance is slightly different. So we'll go into it and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So we start off quantum kinesiology balance. We then go Cosbats to hold the emotional stress release points. For those of you who want to physically hold them yourselves, you know, they're on your forehead. There is an earlier video, I think it's video 8, that explains exactly where these points are and what they do a little bit more. And we're going to be, the Cosbats are going to be on the solar plexus chakra, which is kind of around about here, is yellow, nice bright sunny yellow colour, and is for the immune system, which is good for all of us at the moment, but also about your self-esteem and your self-worth. And that's also important for what is we're going to be talking about today. So first harmonic is an original trigger. It's ancestral inheritance. There's a shock. And this is about the gifts we've been given that we're not using. Okay, so our ancestors give us loads of gifts. As we know, some of them not so great, but lots of them really good. But this is about the fact we've been given these gifts, but we're not actually using them. Okay. Then our next harmonic is under the emotions section, and this is fear of extinction. Now, when we're running this piece of programming, if we're seriously fearful of not surviving, it kicks all of our programs, all those fear programs into gear, and we become much more watchful, we become much more cautious, and we become much more fearful. And when we're fearful, we tend to exhibit the less pleasant side sometimes of our personalities, and we tend to be more looking after our own and looking where the differences are, rather than seeing us all as kind of, you know, one big sort of lovely human race, and then one lovely world with lots of lovely animals in it and all the other sort of if you believe in sort of sprites and all that kind of stuff as well, this kind of whole energetic world. And the emotion that's being embedded in here is panic. And I think because of the coronavirus, as we've mentioned before, we are increasing our slight level of panic, because we actually do have something out there that actually could kill us now. And we don't actually know where it is, we can't see it. So for some of us, that might have really heightened this fear of extinction. So it's really important that we kind of get to grips with this and get to calm that down so we can be much more or much less panicky about life in general. Our next harmonic is relationship healing. And this is the female line. So this is all of our female ancestors going back. It can also be sisters. It can be your children, female children. If your grandparents, also obviously your grandchildren who are female. So we're dealing particularly with the female line. Now, I'm not saying that the male line isn't important here. It's just that this particular balance, we're looking at the female line. I'm sure the men will come in soon. That's all we need to know for that one. We then go into ancestral healing. There's a surprise. And this one is repeating issues. Now, this came straight at me, and it's not something I really thought about, but it ties in really, really cleverly with what we started with, which is gifts we're not using, which is we're not listening and we're not learning. Okay. And this is also something that when we start becoming fearful, we tend to kind of withdraw into what we know rather than questioning what we know. We're seeing this on social media. People are sharing things without checking it out. And some people are actually getting hurt by this, either emotionally or potentially physically. So before you share something that might be contentious, please make sure it's true, or it's completely true. Maybe part of it's true, but not all of it's true. So I think it's really important to think about those sorts of things. So we need to listen and we need to learn. And sometimes we need to listen to our own instincts as well, as in our intuition, but we need to be asking the right questions. And that's something that's become very much more clear to me over the last few days, of looking at the threads that are running between all of our lives, how we're all interconnected, and how it's not so important about finding the answers as it is to ask good questions, because then the answers will be supplied rather than us trying to sort of academically come at those answers, those questions. So that's the last harmonic we need. And then we have a thought. So what I want you all to do now is I want you just to think this statement: I open myself up to listening. Okay, so I open myself up to listening. Oh, this is a bit wobbly. This one is a bit wobbly. So that's what we're going to be thinking. So Therapy Ted is going to have the Cosbats and sit on the paperwork. Now, I've had a couple of comments about the fact that you really like to see him in the ballot doing his work. So we're going to pop him just here so you can see him. There he is. So there he is, working away. And because I actually want us to be quite quiet with this one, I'm not going to really talk to you unless I get given anything while this balance is going through. So we are going to put a little bit of music on, so you know the video is actually continuing. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you just to think that statement: I open myself up to listening. Now, close your eyes if you feel comfortable. If not, just soft focus and you can sort of stare at Therapy Ted over here. I open myself up to listening. And as always, just recognize how that's making your body feel. And then in your own time, just take 3 deep breaths. I open myself up to listening. I open myself up to listening. And this one is settling now. So I just want you to just keep thinking for me. I open myself up to listening. And just go back inside and just see how that makes you feel now. So I open myself up to listening. And there we go. How did that make you all feel? Therapy Ted has done it this end, so his work is now done. And there's nothing I needed to tell you, so it was just, that was the balance. And I hope you feel really much more grounded when you think about I open myself up to listening. And also just listen for the next couple of days. You know, are you getting more messages? Are you getting things coming in where you're getting more coincidences, where things are being suggested to you, and there are those coincidences of things that you're listening to. And if you're not 100% certain, just make a note of them and then see if, do you get a second coincidence? Do you get a third coincidence? If you get 3, universe is trying to tell you something. So on that note, Therapy Ted and I will say have a lovely weekend, and we will see you both on Tuesday. Oh no, both of you. Both of us will see all of you on Tuesday.